At long last, Dr. Jim Madden has returned. Finally. I thought I was going to get mobbed by our customers, Jim. They've been demanding.
You've been
Where is
demanding.
Professor Jim? Where is he? Well, he's been
We
teaching, of
should,
course.
yeah.
Semester's
What we
been
should
back.
have done is like we should have started Patreon, and like once we cross the $5,000 mark, I would come back.
Right, yeah.
Next time,
Now we're
next time
making
that's how it's
demands.
gonna go. Right,
Yeah,
right,
guys.
right.
You guys got the good stuff for free for a while, but not
Yeah,
anymore.
now it's gonna be pay to play, people. Right.
Yeah.
I like that idea. You have like a running tally, like
Just threaten your audience, right?
threatening audience. Right. I'm not doing anything until
Yeah.
we cross the $5,000 mark.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
I got kids in Europe. Damn it, I need the money.
yeah. Well, it's good. It's always great to have you back on in the proper co-hosting position, and it's a good theme. It's a good one to kind of launch back into it. We're going to talk about 2 Substacks that you've written.
Yeah.
Concerning whether does evolution undermine religion? Does evolution undermine religious belief? We are on a bit of a time limit, both of us today, so I don't want to spend too much time on our usual nonsense joking around. Right, so let's make sure we get the core content in, then we can do Q&A and talk about
we don't want to completely waste the audience's time.
Right.
we BS for 45 minutes and then talk philosophy for 5 and then move on. Thanks, kids.
There you guys go. Right,
by the way, we're charging now.
Right. Yeah. But hey, man, it has been a while, so before we get into the topic, any quick updates, anything you want to just mention or announce? Or
no, I've just been busy with family stuff, not bad stuff, but right. And lots of reading and writing, stuff like that. And one fruit of which is actually this 2-part Substack, right? So this has its origin in a lecture I gave for the TI at Texas A&M.
Okay.
A couple weeks ago. So I went down. I did the live version of this, and it went well enough that I thought, I should write that up. Right?
Okay, cool. So I was wondering what the genesis was of this little project, and so it was for a TI lecture.
It was a TI thing. Yeah. And basically what it is, fans of the show will recognize some of the argumentation in here is one of the key, linchpin arguments of my new book, kind of my non-reductive, anti-reductive view about consciousness. And I've been running around kind of applying that little trick to other issues, right? So that paper I did last year on Problem of Evil is basically that trick applied to there, right? This
trick pony, baby.
One trick pony, man. Yeah. Right.
But hey, man, it's a trick that solves all these problems. Keep using it, right?
Mm-hmm. You get a really good submission. You use it to your partners, figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, now I'm applying it to now this particular debate about religious belief and evolution, right? And there'll probably be other iterations of it that'll come up. Yeah.
Cool. So, hey, religion and evolution, this is a common theme that comes up in a lot of different contexts, right? So sometimes people are like, hey, there's a tension here between this particular religious belief and what, evolutionary theory tells us. Say you interpret Genesis one way, and that seems inconsistent with the account of evolution, but that's not what you're...
That's not what I'm doing.
That's not, and I just want to clarify that up front. That is not what you're focusing on. You're focusing on religious belief in general, and I would, reading your article, I would classify yours as really kind of responding to these various evolutionary debunking type of arguments.
Yep, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So set the stage for us.
Yeah. So the way I put it in the Substack and in the lecture is, I say, look, there's 2 kinds of incompatibility, right? There's what I could call indirect incompatibility, which is, you cannot believe these 2 propositions because they cannot both be true, right? So, the example I use, there's a snake in the office and there's not a snake in the office. You cannot affirm both those propositions on pain of contradiction, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably broader than that. The example I use in the essay is, Paris is the capital of the 5th French Republic and Paris is a lake in Wisconsin, right? Now, those aren't, strictly speaking, logically incompatible propositions, right? But there's no way you can take the world seriously as it is, right? There's no just so story you can tell me about the real world, maybe some remote possible world, right? But not about the real world wherein those both come out true. So, and I think usually when we debate about evolution and religion, it's like that kind of debate. Like, is there a just so story we can tell wherein Genesis comes out true and like modern evolutionary theory comes out true, right? And then it's a question of like which one are we going to like kind of like yield on and like smooth out to make it fit the other, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's a fine debate to have. It's just not my jam, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Now another kind of incompatibility is what I call indirect incompatibility, or I think really like, people smarter than me would just call it an undercutting defeater, right?
Right. Versus a rebutting.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. Yeah, like the first would be the rebutting defeater, and the second would be an undercutter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, it's where the two beliefs could be true, right? And they might even actually both be true. But it's by holding the one, you should mistrust your ability to make a judgment about the latter, right? Mm-hmm. So by believing one, it undermines the rationality of the latter. Okay. Right. And an example here would be, I believe that I'm a poor judge of character, right? But I also then believe that Smitty has a fine character. Okay. So if I believe the first one, then I really shouldn't trust my belief in the second one, right? Even though it might be I'm a bad judge of character and Smitty's a great guy, but the fact that I am a bad judge of character, I should like recuse myself from making a judgment about Smitty's character.
Right. But he still might be a good guy.
He still might be, yeah. So like the question isn't about like the truth or falsity of the judgment. It's whether or not I'm in any position to trust myself about that judgment.
Right. And just to kind of push it in the other direction to give a relevant example, this is Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism. It is meant to be an undercutting or undermining defeater of naturalism. Now, it's funny how this can work the other way, but people misunderstand that often. They think he's saying evolution isn't true. That's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying at all. He's like, if you buy into the naturalistic evolutionary paradigm, you're undermining the basis for which you have really any justification of thinking naturalism is true to begin with. Now, it might still be true. But you've undermined the basis
your ability to make a judgment.
Being rational and believing that it's true, right? Exactly. And that is a subtle but important distinction for people to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my favorite example of this is, and I've used it in a number of papers now, right, is so my guy Smitty, believes that there's a multiverse because he's been reading the astrophysics universe or astrophysics literature, as opposed to my guy Smitty believes that there's a multiverse because he's been drinking cough syrup all morning, right? Okay. And really, if we believe that Smitty has been drinking cough syrup all morning, then we should doubt that he has a rational relationship to any inference he's drawing under that condition. Right. Right. So if I said, man, I've been drinking Robitussin all day and I believe there's a multiverse, right? Yeah. Even though there might well be a multiverse, I should not trust my judgments if I've been made aware that I've like been drinking cough syrup all day. Right. You see what I mean? So like there's something wrong with my environment or something wrong with my internal mechanism.
But let the good times roll.
Well, let the good times roll. Been some hard times in Atchison and resorted to cough syrup. Anyway, I think I'm going to have like a bottle of cough syrup out for now on. Right? Okay. But you see the point. So like, even though it might be it doesn't matter if there is or isn't a multiverse. The point is that Smitty, because of his internal state, has the wrong relationship to the truth now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I'm interested in evolution as a kind of charge that religious people have been drinking too much cough syrup.
Yeah.
Right. Or that human beings collectively have been drinking too much cough syrup, and thereby we have a disposition for religion. Okay.
Right.
And you see these kinds of arguments, right? And the one I'm gonna mention, there's a lot, like Daniel Dennett has them and all this, and I'm gonna mention one that actually comes from a devout Catholic, a guy named Matt Rossano, who's a psychologist. I admire a great deal, right? And I see myself in this paper as kind of jumping in to like show why you could accept Rossano's story about the evolution of religion and not see it as a defeater, right, of religion.
Does he see it as a defeater?
He does not. I
was going to say that would be very peculiar.
I don't, yeah, not at all. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I have such like an admiration for this guy's work and him as a human being. I had like a wonderful moment of getting to meet him one time.
Yeah.
So Matt Rossano, if you're listening, you're the man. But in his book, I'm not terribly satisfied with his way of arguing that it's not a defeater. Do you see what I mean? So this is sort of like an amicus brief, right? A friend of the court, right?
Got it.
Yeah. I'm like kind of jumping in to help a little philosophizing here, right? Right. Anyway, so
just to by general background, because you brought up Dennett, right? And he likes to think of Darwinism as the sort of universal acid, right?
Yeah.
Kind of eats, like, once you open this theory up, it just kind of eats through everything that we hold dear and precious. And of course, it's not just religious beliefs for him. And the short story there is, like, we came to form religious beliefs because it just helped us, as Jim says, avoid bears and have sex, right? So it was useful. It was a useful but false belief. There's Dennett. There's the man right there, right? That's exactly the book, Darwin's Dangerous Idea of the Universal Acid, right? But he's going to apply that.
Maybe a guy's working on something about this.
Oh, maybe as a guy, but it doesn't stop. And when he talks about universal acid, it doesn't stop at religious beliefs for him, right? It goes through moral beliefs and a whole lot else. And Plantinga's kind of like a friend of Dennett in a sense, like, oh yes, friend, keep pushing it, keep pushing, because it's going to go right through rationality itself, right? So it's funny how people who hold very different paradigms, a Dennett and a Plantinga, can actually sort of like really agree about something. But the difference is, like, Dennett's willing to try and bite the bullet on all that. I don't think that consistently be done. And Plantinga is saying, like, you've just reduced your position to absurdity. You can hold on. You can hold on to evolution, but you need to give up naturalism, friend, to be rational.
Or you at least have to say your relation to naturalism is not rational.
Right. Yep.
It could be like a fideistic leap or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like like you alluded to this earlier, is, like the basic, like the evolutionary psychological picture is, well, our structures of rationality they came online to serve the reproductive needs of our, like, prehistoric ancestors, right? So they're there not necessarily because they're truth conducive, but they're there because they're, like, dating conducive, right? Ultimately, right? And so, like the example I always like to use, if you've got two monkeys in a forest, right? And, one sees the fire in the forest and says, the mean kinetic energy of the molecules composing my body is about to, like, go up at a high rate. I better get the hell out of here, right? And the other one says, oh my gosh, the heat demon is back and he's going to take me to the island of woe, right? Well, I better get out of here. Well, the thing is they both live to date that day, right? And so it's not necessarily the case that evolution would, like, select structures of reasoning that are truth conducive, right? It's gonna select structures of reasons that are dating conducive, and it might be like quick and easy lies are actually better, right? From an evolutionary standpoint. And there's a guy named Don Hoffman.
And is this just assuming, because I think that's all true and right, but like as Plantinga and others have pushed it, you have other deeper issues of epiphenomenalism and other stuff you have to consider as well. Where it's like, it doesn't even seem like the content of our beliefs would matter at all, right?
That's part of the argument I'm going to make here, right? So, Don Hoffman's a cognitive scientist, I think at Berkeley, and he's done the game theoretic math on this, and he's shown that if you have, like, two computer simulations of organisms, right? One is going to, like, prefer useful truths, right? And the other one is going to, like, prefer useful fictions.
Right.
Within, like, 3 generations, the useful fiction organisms are running things.
Oh, there was a study of this. It was published in the Journal of Theoretical Biology of natural selection and veridical perceptions, and they pretty much came to a very similar conclusion.
Paper.
That it was Justin T. Mark, Marion, and Hoffman. Donald Hoffman. Right. That's so. There you go. Right. We're in the same guy,
so I actually think there's very good reason. It isn't just, like, speculation. Is that, in fact, like, it looks like the game theoretic math would say, in the long run, evolution would favor useful fictions over true beliefs, right? Okay. So if that's the case, then it would seem like we're all operating under cough syrup, right?
Yeah. Not just a religious believer, right?
Yeah, not just a religious belief,
right.
But so for this paper, I'm just looking at the religious belief thing and specifically, but I think you can generalize this argument. Okay.
Right. And that's the problem. So, like, even though I don't always think about, call it the broad argument from reason exactly the way Plantinga does. First off, I think Plantinga's argument has got a lot more force than sometimes people admit. And when you get deep into the literature of it, you see responses to Plantinga. I was reading Stephen Laws the other day that are so ad hoc. Like, people have to bring in all these auxiliary components to naturalism, and it just becomes way ad hoc what people have to do to try and get around. Which to my mind shows, like, wow, Plantinga he's really forceful in what he's articulating here. But the point is, the general point is that it really does seem like this is a sort of universal asset, and it's really hard to contain it once you sort of let that theory out. And it does if it does damage to the religious believer, it's really hard to see how it's not going to eat away at many other things that most of us hold dear, maybe even right down to rationality itself. Right.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to note is, I agree 100%, and I'm very interested in that argument. But I only make that like Plantinga type move at the very end of the essay to answer an objection. So I'm not actually making an argument from reason here. Because I'm not actually, as you'll see, I'm not actually denying evolution at all. Like, I'm kind of granting it for the sake of the argument. Okay. But before I get to that real quick, so I want to mention, like, Rossano makes a very interesting case about how about, I think it was 80,000 years ago. I'm getting the numbers wrong. Maybe 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens made a move out of Africa to go into the Middle East, right? And we got our ass kicked by the Neanderthals. Like, we got sent packing. Okay. We couldn't compete with them. And then for about 30,000 years, we're back in Africa. And then we go back again and like whip ass, right? And like become the dominant species, right? And Rossano makes the point that one of the big changes in the Homo sapien that goes on in that interim period is we began religious practice. Okay. And he shows how like religious practice entails all these other cognitive skills that are very useful in the development of technology and warfare and all these things, and it leads to social cohesion and stuff like that. So then it does seem then you do have a non-veridical explanation of the evolution of religion. Like it's what like got us the great edge over the Neanderthals, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's what, of course, somebody like Dennett would be looking for, right?
Yeah,
is
exactly.
Like what is the specific sort of fitness, reproductive, whatever advantage that these types of beliefs are conferring. And what you're saying is here's Rossano's theory of what that is, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, I think Rossano, among evolutionary psychologists, makes the most interesting case. Okay. Okay. So and then I think in the essay, I cash it out in like space of reason, space of causes stuff. I'm gonna leave that aside now just for simplicity's sake to keep us on task. Right. And so, let's go to the screen here then. Can we do that?
Yeah, let me pull it up for you there, good professor. Oh, look at that. We've got a presentation today.
A presentation. Okay. So
by the way, for people real quick, if you're listening on iTunes or wherever, you might want to pop over to YouTube just to see what Jim is sharing. But if you don't want to do that, then you can he's just sharing a Substack. So I'll be sure to link the Substack so you guys can read the accompanying material as well. Yeah, there you go.
All right. And so basically what I do in this is I say, look, there's an ambiguity in the kind of evolutionary skeptic's case here. And it's an ambiguity on what's meant by belief. All right. You can see on the Substack here, I think we need to distinguish between belief consciousness, belief behavior, and belief physiology. Okay. Sure. So let me rewind a little bit here. So basically the point is what I'm declaring as religion, right, is simply the belief that there are supernatural entities and or principles that are relevant to our conduct. Okay. And what I mean by evolution is the human tendency to hold religion is explained by the reproductive fitness it accrued to our prehistoric ancestors.
Okay, that's a very specific definition of evolution there.
Yeah, that's all, because I want to keep it like right.
You want to keep it hyper focused. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Hyper focused, right?
Yeah.
And so basically what the evolutionary skeptic is saying here is evolution then would be an undercutter of religion, right? Because you're holding it, even if it's true, but you hold it because it gave us reproductive success, not because it's somehow rationally grounded. Okay. Yep. So thereby it's like we're all under like a common cough syrup overdose when it comes to religion. So we shouldn't trust ourselves with it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what I want to argue is this is playing on an ambiguity in the word belief. Okay. Like, because religion's a belief, evolution's a belief, right? And evolution is a belief in an explanation of the belief, religion. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's three things we can mean by belief. All right. One, we could mean the belief consciousness, right? Which is literally the qualitative or intentional or logical content of holding a belief, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it when I explicitly entertain a belief? If I say, do I believe, right? What is it that I'm contemplating there? And there's a lot of ways you could cash it out. You could cash it out in terms of mental image. You could cash it out in terms of like conceptual contents. However, I don't care, right? It's whatever it is that we are like first order aware of when we have a first order awareness of our beliefs.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Also, you could mean what I call belief behavior, right? And that's the patterns of overt behavior that follow on having a belief.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, belief consciousness of there's a rattlesnake in the corner would be my overt thought. Oh my gosh, there's a rattlesnake in the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
The belief behavior would be my like screaming like a baby and jumping on the desk, right?
Yeah.
Or
Mm-hmm.
my just avoiding that corner of the room, or my saying, "Lo, there's a rattlesnake." Okay,
Mm-hmm.
those are all the overt behaviors, right?
I like the last one, especially.
Lo, a rattlesnake. Yeah, right. Quine used to do examples like that all the time, like "lo," right?
Yeah.
Okay, so but I want to note here is you could have the belief behavior without the belief consciousness, right? Like I have the belief behavior that there's a chair sitting like under me right now as I sit, but I don't have any belief consciousness of it necessarily, right? I'm not thinking, oh my gosh, there's a chair there. Oh my gosh, there's a chair there.
Right.
But it's pretty clear I believe there's a chair there as I sit down. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting down in that position.
Totally.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why like I'm surprised if someone pulls the chair out from under me, right? Because I believed it was there, even though I wasn't aware of the belief.
Yes.
Right? So, and I think you could even have beliefs that you cannot raise to consciousness, right? I use the example of, I know quite well where my friend Smitty lives in my neighborhood, but I can't name all the cross streets, right? In the 10 blocks I would have to walk to get there, even though I clearly know how to get down there, right? So that's an important piece of the argument is that there's no absolute causal or conceptual tie between belief consciousness and belief behavior.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right? They're separable. Okay. And then finally, you have what I call belief physiology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's the biological structures, mostly neurophysiology, requisite for a belief, right? So presumably for me to believe that there's a multiverse or that Paris is the capital of the Fifth Republic or, there's a chair under me or whatever, there's got to be some physiological, mostly neurological underpinning or something going on in my nervous system that's necessary for having that belief.
Got it.
Okay, right. But once again, this is the important thing is it seems like all you need to have the belief behavior is the belief physiology. You don't need the belief consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I make this point in the essay that there's an explanatory nexus that goes on between belief behavior and belief physiology, right? Like there's no behavior without physiology, right? And the point of physiology in an organism is to support behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So by explaining behavior in a way, you're going to have like a backdoor explanation of physiology, right?
Yes.
And by explaining physiology in a way, you're going to have a backdoor explanation of behavior, right? Mm-hmm. But consciousness isn't in that party, right? Because the behavior could go on without the consciousness,
mm-hmm.
right? So simply by explaining behavior, you don't explain consciousness, right? And I'm going to make the case here too. Also, by explaining physiology, you don't explain the consciousness, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you could have a complete explanation of consciousness and behavior, or pardon me, of physiology and behavior, without having an explanation of the consciousness.
Yeah.
You see the point there?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think the establishing the fact that you have a like behavior and consciousness can be unlinked is pretty easy. Okay. It's a little harder to unlink physiology from consciousness, right? But here, I just use what is now like the standard gym argument, right? Okay. And it's in detail in the Substack and a bunch of the places I link to in the Substack.
Give us the refresher though.
Yeah, give you a refresher. Is I just simply say, look, let's suppose that lambda is the physiological and probably neurological state that I'm in, right? When I'm thinking about Paris, or I'm thinking that I'm believing that the Paris is the capital of the Fifth French Republic, right? And then let's suppose, that's more or less the kind of state that like the typical modern English speaking human being is in when they have that thought or have that belief. Okay. Now let's suppose, by some fortuitous event, some, caveman has a brain injury, right?
Mm-hmm.
That results in lambda, or like the alien scientist comes down and like stimulates the caveman to have brain state lambda,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I find it like frankly very, very hard to believe that we're going to say that then thereby that alien is having, or pardon me, that caveman is having a thought or a belief about Paris.
Right.
Like before the city ever exists, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before there has ever been a city, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before there's ever been anything the exact color of the Eiffel Tower, whatever, however you want to cash it out. It seems
Yep.
to me you're saying that there's a kind of an intrinsic connection between that particular neural pathway, right? However it gets formed, that somehow makes it have the conscious content of that belief. And I just find that pretty hard to believe.
It seemed to me to be a miracle if that was.
Yeah, it'd be miraculous. Like, and like, why would it be that like just written into the very human nervous system, there'd be a capacity for beliefs about Paris, right?
Right. Unless there was like a super intellect that like,
yeah.
right.
And
coordinated
also,
that or something, right?
Yeah. And also, yeah, I make the case too, that like, if you wanted to say, like, if you wanted to think about minds as disembodied, something like that, I can make the same argument too. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not about defending non-materialism. It's about just saying, look, by giving me the physiology, you have not given me the full explanation of the belief, right? There's something more than that, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's a relationship to a real city, right?
Right.
It's not just the physiology.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
However that relationship comes about, okay, we'll do metaphysics another day, right? Okay. So what's the point then? Is like, looks like you could give me an explanation of the behavior and you could give me an explanation of the physiology, and you would still leave the consciousness of the belief completely opaque in terms of the explanation.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so then this is kind of the easy part of the argument now. Let's go ahead and distinguish, right? Religious consciousness, right, would be the qualitative intentional content of a religious belief. Religious behavior are the patterns of overt bodily movement of a religious belief.
Mm-hmm.
Religious physiology would be the biological structures of religious belief. Okay. Now, clearly, evolution is about getting us good behaviors that reward dating success, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so an evolution explanation would explain belief behavior, right? Okay, and clearly the way evolution assures behavior is it selects certain physiologies that are supportive of this behavior that evolution wants, right? So evolution would give me an explanation of belief physiology, right? But that's very, very far from giving me an explanation of belief consciousness for the reasons I've given earlier, right? That belief consciousness is causally and conceptually distinct from both belief physiology and belief.
And this would expand far beyond religious belief, of course.
Oh yeah, like as you know, this is generally how I think about mind, right? This is kind of like my non-reductive view of mind.
Right. So this would apply. This applies across the board.
Across the board.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So because I'm saying here is whatever minds are, whether they're physical or immaterial or whatever that means, right? I don't care for these purposes. What I'm telling you though is, I think we've got a good case to make that there's an explanatory autonomy about mind, right? That gives us some latitude with respect to physiology and behavior.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm granting, yeah, you're right. Evolution would explain religious behavior. It would explain religious physiology, but it would not explain religious consciousness,
mm-hmm.
right? So even you could grant like something like Rossano's interesting case at a physiological and a behavioral level, right? But it doesn't explain to us the consciousness,
right?
It doesn't explain to us the cognitive content of it.
And what theory of mind does Rossano himself hold? Do you know?
I think he sees himself as, he wrote, interestingly, he wrote a pretty cool little book on Plato and Aristotle.
Oh, did he now?
Yeah. So I think he sees himself in like broadly kind of the classical Greek view of things. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The fact that he is not coming from the perspective as a naturalist is what.
Yeah. He's not a naturalist. Yeah.
Makes me want to raise that question. I mean, I think if you're coming at it, and that's sort of like the difficult thing with, these types. First off, I think you've done a brilliant job here, Professor, and I want you to close it off, even though I think that the point should be clear at this point.
Yeah.
But evolution broadly considered is like there's a lot of content to what we mean by that, right? Now you've done a good job here of specifically defining what you mean by evolution.
Yeah.
But evolution, of course, can and often does mean descent with modification, common ancestry, and arguably most importantly for the naturalist, but also the most controversially, is the mechanism, right? It's the mechanism. And of course, familiar with how people think about that, right? Okay, so even if you grant all that as a theist, right, to then try and if you're just as a theist granting it just for the sake of argument, that I'm fine with that whole picture, right? It still seems like you need, as Plantinga always talks about it, that sort of philosophical add-on or that metaphysical layer of naturalism to really start to generate the tensions that arise in these sort of debunking arguments, right? So it's the difficult thing with arguments like this when they're considered so broadly is disentangling all of that and trying to get to the heart of what the tension actually is. Because if you're a theist, and even if you accept the general Darwinian paradigm, I mean, naturally, you're not going to see these things as being competitive, right? You're going to be like, oh, yeah, of course, God gave us those religious beliefs and they happen to be useful because 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing, right? It's sort of only if you've already kind of got that layer going, unless, of course, you think you're like totally agnostic, right? And then so for the agnostic, it might be more interesting because then you might think, but then it still comes down. I think this is where your cases would be really useful. It comes down to deeper considerations of mind and metaphysics and how much can a physiological explanation or an etiological explanation from a sort of physicalist paradigm or materialist paradigm, how much can that actually explain? And what I'm getting here, if I'm doing a bad job of trying to summarize the whole thing, is you're saying, maybe it could explain a lot, but the buck stops here in terms of explanation, right?
Yeah, I think it explains 100% what it's supposed to explain, behavior and physiology, right? Okay, but the problem is I think we can make a very good case that consciousness is not the same thing as behavior or physiology, right?
Yeah.
And now, granted, there's like a weird tension here. Then what the hell does explain and all that? Fair enough, but okay, go to work, right? You see what I mean? And so all I'm trying to show is simply by granting that there is a rather interesting evolutionary explanation to be given of, religious behavior or moral behavior or religious physiology or moral physiology or artistic behavior, artistic physiology, right? Whatever it is, fill in your like mode of human consciousness, right? Just because we can give an evolutionary explanation of the behaviors and the physiological underpinnings of them does in no way entails that you thereby have an explanation of the consciousness.
Right.
Okay? Right. Now, I agree, and this comes up and I'm starting to make it all about my stuff, right? But
no, I mean, this
comes up in my
great material.
Papers. It's because like it does seem that consciousness is explanatorily epiphenomenal, right? And I think people hear that and they think that that's a bug. I see that as a feature, right? Because like, why the hell then is that sitting smack dab in the middle of things? This thing that does not seem to do any work. It might just be there for the sake of contemplation, right? I mean, you know what I mean? And so that to me is a familiar story. And one, you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this gets to, I actually had a conversation with a interesting gentleman the other day, Paul Chung. People should check that conversation out. It was just uploaded this morning. And we were talking about, it's sometimes hard to make progress between people, different paradigms, when you just kind of like throw out one argument here, one argument there. What you really need to do is try and step into a paradigm and try and predict from that paradigm the other problems you would expect the opposing paradigms to have. And can you make those sorts of accurate predictions? And I would say the theistic paradigm is like predicting those problems that Jim's pointing out. And within the naturalistic paradigm, it's admitted that they are problems, right? And if this sort of broadly McIntyre way of paradigm assessment is correct, that would be considerable reason or reasons to favor the theistic paradigm.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Right. And I think that's actually a really valuable way of doing paradigm and worldview comparison, but it requires really trying to step into different paradigms, see through that lens, be able to speak the natural language of that paradigm, right? Which is a lot of work.
Speak two mother tongues.
To speak two mother tongues, that's right. And then not just making predictions from the paradigm about the world, but predictions about other paradigms as well, and the problems that they might face. Now he's doing it with moral theories largely, but you can expand that practice, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to build on that or summarize anything else?
I agree. Yeah. And so like in the paper, or the essay, I guess it's not paper, it's electronic, but it's, I think actually increasingly Substack is my preferred way of academic expression, right? But what I end up saying is, okay, so for these purposes, I'm just saying religious consciousness is just a great big question mark, right? And so like, what does explain it? Well, that's like the question, right? That is the question. And then that's something I would kick to other modes of philosophizing.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. You've just blocked this attack, right?
Yeah. But you think of it like evolutionary, like psychology arguments, whether they come from Nietzsche or the psychoanalysts or, from like contemporary evolutionary psychologists, right? These kind of debunking arguments, they really are arguments in the philosophy of mind, right? They are arguments, right, about giving a certain explanation of what mindedness is. Okay. But we can't front load a physicalism into that just presumes, right, that, well, the full story about mind is behavior and physiology, right? Do you see what I mean?
And how often that happens, right?
How often that happens. Yeah. Because like really, if what the evolutionary argument against religion is, the one I'm producing here, is just to say, well, hey, it turns out that there's our behaviors and our physiology are explained in the way we'd expect behaviors and physiology to be explained. Well, big whoop, right? Do you see what I mean? But that doesn't tell me anything about the consciousness. And like, so we would need some special case here of why the consciousness in this case is explained by evolutionary principles, when in general, it doesn't seem like evolutionary principles explain consciousness.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about this?
No, that's it. Yeah.
All right, good. Well, people can read the full account over at your Substack. I will link it after. We've got a few more minutes, Jim. Should we see if there's any questions from the audience here?
And I know this is like pretentious to me because it's like they're two fairly long pieces, but do read both pieces because I think that the setup is important, right? So
yeah, and just subscribe to both of our Substacks because we're both active on there quite a bit and consistently so. So it really is a good way to supplement the podcast, I think.
I'm inconsistently consistent at it. So.
But like when you do your subs, I've got a number of longer pieces, but I also do a lot of shorter ones. When Jim goes, he goes.
I go.
Substack, right? Yeah, he's had a little bit of that Robitussin the night before.
That's right. Yeah. So what I do, I go away, I read, and I think for 6 weeks, and then I drink a case of Robitussin.
Right. We got the Crido in one hand, Robitussin in the other. Let the good times roll.
T-shirt.
That's what's good to sponsorship. All right, here's a good one.
Up, Johnny.
Question from Parisa. Is it enough to say that evolutionary arguments against religion, that they're just some sort of genetic fallacy? So yeah, let me summarize this. And my short answer is no, I don't think it's enough just to say that. So sometimes you'll hear, I guess certain apologists will say, it's a genetic fallacy. Let me give a different example of it in different context. Sometimes people put evolution aside. They'll be like, well, Jim, the only reason you're Christian is because well, your dad was, and he just, if you had a different dad or you were born in Portland, Oregon, you would have been an atheist, right? And people would be like, well, that's a genetic fallacy because it doesn't show that it's false. And that's true. It doesn't show that it's false,
right?
But it might undermine your justification.
Yeah. The point is,
do
I have the right relationship to this belief to be in a position to rationally evaluate it?
Right. And that's the key, right? Yeah. It is true if the person were saying it's false, which admittedly, a lot of times the people who are attacking it are inferring that it's false. And that is a fallacy. Yeah, that's a fallacy. If they specify that it's an attack on one's justification, then you have to do more than just call it the genetic fallacy.
Yes.
Or what have you. So, and then you need to give some other sort of defense or story. I think you can do that in cases of religion. I think that, I actually really like the paper that Bogardus has on this, that, because he's specifically thinking about epistemology from this problem, right? Specifically from this problem. I forget what was the name of his paper on this. Didn't we talk to him about it?
He's in the show.
So I would say, Preez, if you didn't see the conversation that Jim and I did with Bogardus, I think he has a very good response to it, the further response that you should give to this type of challenge rather than just throwing out the it's a genetic fallacy and thinking that you've solved the issue. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yep. I agree 100%. And really what I'm trying to do in this essay is to like have an answer without appealing to genetic fallacy. Right.
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Pat is going all out for what is Movember? I've heard of No Shave November, but what is Movember? Movember. Have you heard of this?
I've not heard of this.
Dr. Jim Rockford is back. Yes, he is.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we finished all of Rockford Files.
No, Jim Rockford didn't drink Robitussin. He drank scotch and beer. And
yeah,
beer. Right. Out of the can. And the kind of the flop top you had to tear off of there.
Yeah. So what other research you've been doing here, Jan? I've been doing a little bit of research of my own. Yeah. In fact, I've been doing research into chicken wings, and right now I've come out because I've been kind of surveying the local wing spots and Wingstop. Man, you ever have a Wingstop?
I haven't.
Yeah, we pitted them against Buffalo Wild Wings and some others, and right now they're winning the research project of best wing shop.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So I've been teaching a course on Merleau-Ponty and Heidegger on aesthetics. It's like that's been big for me. And what else have I been doing? I've been doing a lot of jiu-jitsu, right? But you know that, right?
Yep.
Got my brown belt.
Oh, dude, yeah. And I found out through
Swafford. Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations, man. That's so fantastic. It's awesome.
Yeah. And that's pretty much it. I've been reading a ton of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I started reading Marx's Capital.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good. I never got through that, man. That's
I never and I tell you it's maybe we'll do a thing on it sometime.
Yeah, like Manifesto, that's easy, but the Capital, I just couldn't do it.
I'm finding it fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, no doubt it's fascinating, just like Marcuse is fascinating.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been my major reading project right now.
Yeah, very, very cool. So you're still teaching, things are still busy, but perhaps we'll resume our Aristotle series here soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially like with the like Thanksgiving break and all that coming, things will
right.
So the way I play my semesters, I get less busy as the semester goes on, not more.
Yeah, good man. Smart.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, after Thanksgiving, man, it's like movie time in class.
Oh yeah, dude. Just put on the Griswolds.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Like, we're gonna try about Christmas.
Well, make them write like serious philosophical essays.
What would Kierkegaard say about the Charlie Brown Christmas? Right.
What's the one? Don't they have a is there a Charlie Brown? No, it's Garfield's Christmas that we watched last year. That was a good one too. Yeah.
You know, there's always like that, like high school teacher you had who just like, it's like a coach who just basically he just like does study halls, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, and he's sitting in the front of the room and he's got his feet in the desk. He's reading the newspaper, and like the one thing that would get you in trouble in that study hall is like you would like bother coach.
Yeah.
Right? That's you know what I mean. Like you could be drinking Robitussin and he wouldn't care as long as you don't bother coach.
Yeah, but if you bother coach, man, you're dead. You're dead, so, dude. Yeah,
that's pretty much me after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. So my class just don't. As long as I don't hear from you, you're gonna get like 10 extra points.
You're gonna do a good job. Awesome. All right. So let's. So I'm gonna be heading to the old gym here in a minute, but in the meantime, I want to encourage people again. Hey, please help us. The channel's growing. Thanks to all of you guys. So please subscribe, share with both of your friends. Hit up Jim's Substack. Ease up on the Robitussin. Hit up my Substack. We'll put some links in below. And Jim, any final words here?
What are you doing at the gym? Are you continuing your quest to get swole?
Yeah, dude, that's why we're eating all them chicken wings. And man, I'll tell you what, dude, I almost swung into Taco Bell the other day because I'm trying to get all these extra calories in. And I kid you not, it's probably been about 20 years since I've had Taco Bell.
That's gonna have downstream consequences.
Yeah, no kidding, man. Yeah, but no, I am trying to try to put it on a little bit. I sent Jim a little picture. Don't let your wife see our message.
Yeah, right. I never do, Pat. Never do. Yeah, we'll have to do a fitness side one, and we'll just talk about because we both like kind of went our own like shameless bodybuilding odysseys for the last few months here.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Right. But long story short, I'm doing presses, so I've got some higher rep presses today, a couple pressing variations, some front squats, and that's about it. Pressing and front squats will be the agenda today.
Nice.
Yeah. How about you? Did you train yet?
I did. As you know, I'm starting a new program, and this morning I played around to see how bad my press is right now. Right.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been doing it, so I got that squared away. And so then Monday I'll start the new program.
It's amazing how, you know, specificity matters so much.
Oh,
man.
God. Especially in the press.
Oh, it's just like, there's this notion, if I can just rant for a minute about it, totally unrelated to this topic,
right.
but this is our show, right?
Yeah, sure, man.
You hear it all the time, like carryover in fitness. Oh, this carries over. So it's a thing, but it's way less of a thing than most people admit, right? I mean, the truth is like fitness is like philosophy, is like a musical instrument, right?
It's good for its own sake.
You get good at the specific things you practice, right?
Yep.
Some things will have like, okay, if I get good at the guitar, like, yeah, some things will carry over to other instruments, like a basic sense of rhythm, but like, I'm always going to suck at the drums unless I actually do the drums, right? As much rock as I play, I'm always going to suck at jazz unless I play jazz, right? And so it's just greatly overestimated what the carryover effect is from anything in fitness. And if you don't stay on something, you lose it pretty quick.
Yeah. Like, remember, I had that great thing I did with Alex, where I got my pressing through the roof, right? And now it's like all gone, right? You know, but I think, you know, probably in terms of carryover, getting to the, just as an arbitrary example, like getting to the point that you can press a 32 kilogram kettlebell probably matters a lot. But the difference between the 32 and the beast makes very little practical difference.
That's a good point. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right.
And the good news is
outer edge, super elite strength probably doesn't carry over very much.
That's right. There's definitely diminished returns. And the other thing to keep in mind for the fitness stuff is before people get all depressed when they lose something, it's always easier to get it back than it is to gain it in the first place. So I saw people say that to me all the time. Oh, I didn't squat forever long and now I'm weak as a potato. It's like, chill, dude. Like you'll get it back much easier. Like it's still in you somewhere, right? In a deep...
I bet you by the end of the month I'm doing triples again with the 40 kilogram.
Yeah.
It'll come back.
Right. Same thing with philosophy, man. You just like switch focuses for a while. Like there's things that I'm sure this is the case with you that like I researched and I knew really, really well, but I'm sure if you sort of asked me about it now, like it'd be a lot of question marks. Just forget stuff, right? It's just like, but if you went back to it, you would come to understand it again much more quickly than the first time you really tried to figure something, and probably better, right? It's actually good to take a break from something for a while, and then come back to it. So some general lessons there for people.
Definitely.
All right, peace, guys. We'll see you next time.